Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name's Ben Spector. I lead solutions at Zementum. I'm joined here today by Ted Roller, who is an old friend for me. He was with Zementum in the early days, took it, really helped with growth for the first couple of years, and then disappeared off to do far more exciting payments things in other places, and has now come back to help us really drive payment processes forward on the Zementum team as channel chief. Ted, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ben. Glad to be here. So what do we want to dig into today? I'm excited. So Ben, that was a terrible introduction, by the way. I went on to do I have other payment processing things, but I have been working in other parts of the industry, helping different companies get launched. But it really does feel good. Really exciting to be back at Momentum to see the directions Momentum's heading and just how exciting everything is. It's really it's been inspiring lately. So thanks for having me. Ready to be here. What are we going to get into today, man? Where do you want to start?
I'm going to get rid of the slide first so that everyone can see us full screen.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I think perhaps the first thing we should probably talk about is how payment processing has changed in the MSP industry over the last few years or possibly even 10 years. I know from my perspective, the UK and Europe may have been slightly further ahead in terms of payment automation, but it'd be great to get your perspective on how things have changed, especially for the US.
Well, for MSPs in particular, I actually did work 3 years with a company that used to exist in the channel, Connect Booster, which were the pioneers in the space around payment processing. They created the first software engine for payment processing specifically for MSPs, the first integration with ConnectWise, et cetera, and so on. And that really changed how MSPs function from soup to nuts. In the broader industry, Ben and I were having this argument a little bit ago about how the UK and Europe are so far ahead of the US from a chip and pin perspective and so on and so forth. So, well, Ben, last night I went to dinner and I paid with a QR code on the receipt. And this morning I went to have breakfast at a little place called the Hideout down here in Key Largo and, tapped my phone and left and didn't sign either one of those things. So I feel like we've caught up here. Payment processing has become an automated, technologically driven digital process. Obviously not everywhere, and I don't know if it's everywhere in Europe. But Ben, why don't you tell? I mean, like, what's the experience there? Is it do you ever sign? I mean, I still occasionally sign a receipt, but
No, no. We haven't been signing things for at least 5 years, possibly 10 years. I mean, chip and pin was mandated so long ago. It's barely within my memorable lifespan. And I think that same theme of the kind of modernization of B2C payments has also had a massive impact on B2B payments. Like in my MSP, we were getting paid with direct debit, which is the UK equivalent of ACH. Every single one of my clients back in 2014 was on direct debit. Like we wouldn't have taken on a new client that wasn't paying by direct debit. And so it's really been quite surprising for me to see that quite a lot of the partners working with Zementum are coming from a place where they haven't modernized payments to that extent. A lot of them are still taking a significant number of push bank transfers where the process, the timeline, the delays are put in the hands of their customers. A lot of them are still taking checks. I know you've got a little story about
Yeah,
the checks.
let's talk about that for a minute. I would like so I don't really write checks anymore. The just the way Zomentum transacts business is one thing, but the way I transact business in my life is I've had 50 checks over the last 5 years, and I just wrote the last one. So, one check every couple months when somebody requires it or whatever. Recently I had to do I had to write a check to a contractor, and I went online and wrote that check from a software tool, bill pay. And the check went out, was stolen in the post office, um, taken to Denver. I was sending it from Raleigh to Charlotte, so not where it was supposed to go. Somebody tried to cash it in Denver. I was paying attention to it because I wanted to make sure that the contractor got paid quickly and effectively. So as soon as they didn't get it, I called the bank and said, "Hey, this is weird." Or actually, I saw the transaction come through. I saw it hit the bank within minutes of them depositing it, and called the bank and they said, yeah, don't send checks anymore. Like, don't use checks. So I'm like, okay, but this is your bill pay software. Why? They're like, no, especially in Charlotte and so on and so forth. Stuff gets stolen from the mail all the time, and all the lots of checks get stolen. They know what our checks look like. So yeah, don't do that anymore. Well, so that led to just as a cautionary tale for everybody here, that led to, okay, now they have your account information. They will try to hit it later. You need to stop payment, like lock the account down. So I locked the account down, and I have two condos, and the payments on both of those condos didn't go through. They told me that the bank told me, hey, if it's a regular transaction, we'll just let it go through. But if it's something strange, we'll stop it. Well, one side of the bank doesn't really talk to the other side of the bank. The other side of the bank is like, nah, blah. And so long story short, I just got my credit rating was in the eight 840, and now it's 740 as a result of those payments not going through and me not knowing that they hadn't gone through. I'll get it fixed, but it's work. It's stuff that I have to do. Paying anything. Long story short, it's a long way of saying don't pay anything with check if you can help it, and don't take checks either if you can avoid it, because it's just a mess. It's a really bad way to do business these days.
Yeah, and I mean, how does that work? This electronic to paper check journey thing? Because when people talk about checks, to me, I used to have a checkbook, and I'd physically write a check in ink and give it to or send it to the person. But how do
Yeah,
your
no,
electronic checks work?
so there's an app. There are a bunch of different companies who have them that partner with banks, and it's just a private label software solution used generally called Bill Pay, just like
Yeah,
ACH is ACH and so on and so forth. But you hit your app. I mean, I go into the app, I hit Be It Bill Pay, I put in who I want to pay, and it does a search for, if it's a company, it does a search and finds the person or finds the company. If it's an individual, you just put in their information. Uh, and they actually, as I understand it, they make money on the float. They
yeah,
take the money out of your account immediately. 5 days later, they pay. 5 to 10 days later, they pay somebody else and make interest on the float, and that's the revenue model. So it's that simple. That's one of the reasons you kind of think you're doing electronic payments because you're going on a computer and you're paying somebody, but that
yeah.
all that does is trigger a printer somewhere and and a mail stuffing situation, and a check goes out in the mail just like 100 years ago. Maybe not a horse anymore, but nevertheless, still going out in the mail, still susceptible to being snagged out of a post office, being snagged out of a mailbox. There are a million different ways that you can lose that check, and there's an entire industry around stealing it now. Apparently, so much more prolific than it used to be, and utterly unenforceable, or
Yeah.
that's the way the bank describes it. So.
So revolutionizing payments for MSPs, what have you learned over the last few years that, how can technology be used to revolutionize the way MSPs get paid?
Well, there are options now. You have all kinds of options, and what it revolutionized, what it would have, I was an MSP for 15 years, Ben. You know that. I think you were an MSP for 6 months or something. No, just kidding. I don't know. How long were you an MSP?
Somewhere between 10 and 12 years, depending on how serious it was in the first couple of years. I didn't know what I was doing for the first 2 years, so I kind of ignore those.
All right. Well, fair enough. Um, for me, managing cash flow was a day-to-day event. Today, managing cash flow for most MSPs is not. You get paid at the time of transaction. Obviously, you have to uh, manage your finances in a way where you have plenty of cash on hand in order to run the business. But as long as you're appropriately funded, getting paid earlier is the big revolution. It's, A, I get paid sooner. B, um, it's an automated process that doesn't require me, like literally when I was an MSP, I took the check, we got the mail, I grabbed the checks out, handed the rest of the mail to somebody else, opened the checks, signed them on the back, and took them to the bank. Literally, that was the daily thing. That was kind of my like get out of the office every day thing. Just for 15 minutes, run to the bank, say hi to the bank. The bank was a customer, so it kind of was a good thing. Um, but like things have changed so much. The integrations are rich and deep and capable. And with Zomentum, it gets even better because payments happen at the time of quote acceptance, not at the time of invoice. And that's huge. Like that is an extra few days, and that is and Ben actually taught me this. That really, and it makes all the sense in the world. It really moves the transaction into the place of excitement. It's harder to collect after a deliverable has been delivered because there's buyer's remorse. There's all those other kinds of things that can get in the way of somebody paying you. There's the, oh yeah, I have to pay somebody, which means I have to do something and I have to be without funds. Neither one of those things is a positive thing. But at a time where you're somebody saying, man, I can't wait to use this technology to solve this problem or whatever it is, they're more than happy to pay. You're getting paid sooner. And yeah, no, I mean, the industry has just changed. We've become Europe to to use your example. But what do you think, Ben? You've been closer to it with Momentum for a while. I've actually worked with three companies that do payment processing in one way, shape, form, or another. Um, and anyway, what's your take?
Yeah, I think the excitement of the sale thing is one of the most important things to me because if I go to a car dealership, any purchase is emotional. It doesn't matter what it is. Business purchases are emotional. Personal purchases are emotional. When I go to a car dealership, it's an emotionally driven decision. And
Sure.
if they ask me for $20,000 to take the keys to a fancy new car today, I'll give them the $20,000 to get the fancy new keys. But if you're right. If I take the fancy new keys and then a week later they're sending me the bill for the car, it's like I'm not excited anymore. That buyer's, it's not necessarily buyer's remorse, but the excitement of the sale is such a pivotal moment in getting the client to do exactly what you want them to do in the order you want them to do it, in the way you want them to do it. And another example of that using the Momentum platform is that you're collecting not just necessarily any upfront payment. You may be collecting payment for a laptop, you may be collecting the first month service fees upfront, but crucially, you're getting the mandate on file. One of
Yes.
the biggest challenges, I've been running automated payment in my MSP like since 2013, 2014, 10 years. And the hardest thing back then was we'd get the proposal signed off. Ironically, I think it was QuoteWorks, old school. We got that proposal signed off and we collected a payment at that point using Sage Pay or Stripe. We collected a credit card payment, which was fine. But then the first month invoice gets issued sometime later, and we're having to go back to the client begging for the direct debit to be put on file because we didn't capture it during the excitement of the sale. And the amount of chasing in pretty much 100% of cases was so frustrating and time consuming because in a lot of cases we'd end up 6 8 weeks later sending them every 4 days. Can you set up the direct debit? It will take you 30 seconds. You literally need to fill in one form. Please do it today. Oh yeah, we'll do it. And then they get distracted and they don't do it, and it's incredibly frustrating. And all of that massively impacts your cash flow, and obviously when you don't have any cash in the business, you start to struggle with the bills, but also it hampers your growth. So for me, when we were building Zementum Payments, it was really designed around the challenges that those of us who were designing it have personally had in running our MSPs. Jeff was running a slightly larger MSP in Belgium. I've been running an MSP in the UK, and we'd both had unique challenges around payments. For me, the biggest thing was about moving the mandate creation up to the beginning of the process. For Jeff, I think their bookkeeping solutions in Belgium are far more disparate. Like in the UK and the US, it's QuickBooks or zero. If you're using something else, something's gone wrong.
Sure.
Everyone's using QuickBooks and Zero, and so it's kind of easy to find a bank that's going to integrate their feeds, and it's kind of easy to find things that integrate to some extent. But in Belgium, they don't have that same luxury. Like there are, I think he was saying 65 different bookkeeping softwares, and that probably like it's just nuts. And so, any platform building functionality out, they might pick one or two to integrate with, but they're sure as hell not going to integrate with all of them.
Right.
Um, so solving the very specific pain points. Like if we look at Go Cardless as an alternative, Go Cardless started in the UK. They're based in London. I was using Go Cardless. They truly unlocked the possibility of collecting direct debit 10 years ago. Because prior to Go Cardless, the only way to collect direct debit was to put £500,000 on deposit with a bank and have the bank as your bureau for processing those payments. And no small business can put £500,000 on deposit with a bank just to sit there tied up in case of disputes. Go Cardless kind of democratized direct debit in a way that all small businesses could do it. And then they've spread to other parts of the world. I think they're now actually surprisingly large in the US as well. But crucially, and I don't understand why, they only do direct debit payments and ACH. When I talk about direct debit, I'm referring to ACH, or if you're in Europe, SEPA, whichever scheme, a direct debit scheme. I don't understand why Go Cardless don't do that, because the impact is on the MSPs. They may be using Go Cardless for the direct debit or the ACH payments, but you still have some clients that need to pay with a credit card or a debit card. And so you're inevitably having to run two platforms in parallel. For me, it was Go Cardless for the direct debits and Stripe for the credit cards. Suddenly you've got twice as much reconciliation. Stripe
Yep.
doesn't integrate with QuickBooks. I think it has a flimsy integration with Zero. Go Cardless does integrate with both of them. It integrates better with Zero than it does with QuickBooks. But you've got two platforms with totally disparate connections to the accounting software. If the client suddenly normally they pay by direct debit. 1 month they ring me up and say, Ben, we're having a bit of a cash flow issue this month. The direct debit is going to fail, but we can put it on a credit card. Right, great, fine. Use the same link you already have on the invoice that you've had before, and just pop in your credit card details. And we can even store those credit card details. So if you call me again next month and say, this is really embarrassing, the direct debit's going to fail, could you just charge our card? I can just go into the Zementum payments portal and go ding, 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 and choose to charge the card instead of the direct debit. What if they haven't called me up? The next month, the direct debit fails. We all think it's going to go through, but the direct debit fails. Well, guess what? We've got the credit card on file anyway, so we'll just hit that one. It means we can start storing backup payments. We can take multiple payment options. We can get all of that in place during that critical emotional stage of the sale before the car keys get handed over. And I think that is the really revolutionary point in all of this.
Well,
You can tell I get excited because I don't stop talking. My
I
arms
was
go
gonna,
in the air.
I was gonna take a nap, but we're good. No, so many headaches eliminated, so many tools eliminated. I mean, when you think about what you just said, tool, QuoteWorks,
Yep.
tool, Go Cardless, tool, Stripe. That's three tools right there. Tools Momentum, tools Momentum, tools Momentum. I mean, like one tool, one single place to get all this done. All that thought about and created and designed with the headaches eliminated for MSPs. Every single one of them, every point of failure, every option that you're thinking about, addressed, dealt with, and kind of no extra cost. I mean,
Yeah.
what do people pay? What do MSPs pay for Zoom? I mean, I know with Connect Booster was $225 a month plus credit card fees and there are other transactional fees, and I know other places have real costs associated with it. Where are we then? Help.
Yeah, so Zementum have been going through, I think the best way to describe it is experimental pricing over the last 4, 5, 6 months. And it has been something that it's been discussed a lot in the community. make no bones about that. We are aware that there has been a bit of discussion about what's going on with Zementum's pricing. So I feel like we should just address it transparently. You know,
Oh,
since
absolutely.
since the end of last year, we have been trying to make Zementum free for everyone forever. But you can't just do that overnight. We've got all of our historical revenue from existing partners, and we can't just say on the 1st of December, right, we're switching off all the old revenue, and from now on it's free for everyone. And this may or may not work. Like everyone loses in that scenario because if we don't make the payroll, the platform shuts down and everyone loses. But where we've got to over the last 4 or 5 months is to a place where we understand that crucially we can support the development and nothing slowing down here. We can truly support and build the development of the sales CRM platform essentially by subsidizing it with the payments transaction fees, the margin on
Yeah,
those transaction fees. And that
strategically.
becomes, sorry, go on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ben. I thought you were a pausing
No,
place, but
no,
strategically,
no. And it becomes a win-win for everyone because essentially if we're only making money when you are directly making money, we get paid literally when you get paid, then I
right.
think the incentives are aligned for everyone because we make more money if we help you grow because you're getting paid more and you're collecting more payments. Like it's a really simple alignment of those incentives between our businesses that we hope is going to really help drive partnerships. Um, and it means that the entire suite of Zementum tools becomes available to people who may have thought they couldn't justify spending a couple of $100s on a platform that is genuinely going to help them transform their business. So in a way, you can say we're kind of democratizing sales in the same way GoCardless democratized direct debit 10 years ago.
I agree. I think what we're really doing though is creating a platform that drives scalable, sustainable revenue in a single tool. Well, and at the same time, we're eliminating every MSP spends a little, some, or a lot of money on their sales and marketing effort every month. Like I used to ask the question on stage, how many of you are spending more than $10,000 a month on marketing? And MSPs would look at me like I was crazy. And then there were two people in the back of the room going, yeah, that's me. And so what's your revenue? $27 million a year. Interesting or alignment of numbers. Big marketing spend equals, and I don't know how they got there, but either way, what Zomentum is really doing is creating the opportunity to have a sales motion that makes sense. And then identifying tools, payments is an example of those tools. There will be more examples coming down the road of things that we give you the ability to do today. I do a lot of webinars with our vendor partners, and the vendor partners put all of their content into Zomentum. And then we give, that's one of the ways you can get a free license of Zomentum today is be on one of the webinars with our vendor partners. And then the vendor partners, subsidizes a little bit the license of forever free license of Zomentum, but they also put all their content and all their information in there. That's a time saving feature that brings two vendors together into a single place. And there are going to be other things associated with distribution and access and so on and so forth. Lots of stuff coming down the pipe that is going to make a huge difference in our ability to drive revenue, which we need to do, obviously. We don't want broke vendors. But at the same time, your ability to use one tool as a marketplace, one tool as a platform, one tool as a place to solve a lot of your sales problems and do it in a way where you're not getting in the car and picking up the bag and going and selling. You're managing the sales conversation, the sales motion, and the quoting, and the payments, and all that stuff in one place. It's just like this is what I get excited about and talk forever about, Ben. So, like putting all that together in one tool is powerful for the MSP and gives you the flexibility to do a whole bunch of things that you want to do and still work with a bunch of vendors. We're not trying to say use us instead of anybody else. What we're saying is over time, you will be able to actually spend fewer dollars, have all of your sales efforts aligned in one place, and will be deeply and richly connected with all the vendors in the space in order to help you be successful. And I think that's where Zomentum's going, and payments was the first step in that direction. You know, a lot of people would argue that payments are, uh, you know, pretty, it's a pretty boring space. Like it can, just do it and go down the road. I've made the toilet paper analogy before. We won't go into it today, but if anybody wants to know about toilet paper analogy, send me an email. Um, anyway, but at the end of the day, I think, Ben, you've talked about a whole bunch of ways in which payments is still a growing, changing industry. It's still exciting and it can have a significant impact on your day-to-day time. And MSPs, you know, time is it. Time is revenue. And the more time you can get back from mundane tasks, the more win you get. More time you have to either spend on yourself or spend on the business. So.
Spend on that. I have a 18-month-old golden retriever puppy sitting staring at me. If you can see my arm moving, it's because I'm having to stroke his head to keep him quiet. I know we were wanting to try and keep this to about half an hour. In terms of really actionable insights that partners watching this can take away, can you give us your top tips for invoicing, follow-ups, and leveraging payment terms that are going to help our partners, scale their revenue more sustainably?
Hot tips.
Invoice on time has to be the number one.
Well, yeah, it is, but I think we talked about buyer's remorse. We talked about aligning things so they happen in an automated fashion. I mean, we didn't really say that specifically, but all of this is a very automated process that drives a consistent behavior modality that most customers appreciate. I know when I buy something from my MSP that as soon as I select yes, order this thing, I'm getting a bill, and that bill is going to hit my credit card or hit ACH or do whatever is supposed to happen next. That's going to happen next. And then somebody's going to reach out to me, or I'm going to get an email or whatever. Driving that consistent behavior, making sure your customers know every time you bill them, every time you engage with them, every time you sell them additional services, that there's a consistency associated with working with you. Every time I go to the Delta website and order a flight, pretty much that stuff works. The only time in the last year that hasn't worked is when I talked to an agent, and I don't know what she did, but I ended up falling off a flight. Anyway, neither here nor there. Having consistent engagement is critically important to keeping your customers happy and satisfied. And from a sales perspective, Zomentum gives so many opportunities along those lines. I know, I mean, we're not really talking about Zomentum today. We're talking about the industry, but I can't help but go back to how nice it is to get a quote from your MSP that just looks the same, feels the same, has lots of information, and is tied together very tightly with everything else that's going on. I guess
I'm actually going to
operational.
stop. I want to double down on this
Okay,
consistency
go
thing
ahead.
with clients because I've been sitting in on quite a lot of onboarding calls for Zomentum payments, and one of the most interesting. It's not an objection to the product; it's an objection to the concept that I hear a lot. Is our clients don't want this. Our clients have always paid us by check. Our clients have always paid us in this way. Our clients have always paid us 3 months late. Like, who owns this process? Is this your business process, or do your clients run your business now? Like, is that how this is? And you've got to
Let's
train them into this consistency that they take a service, they pay the bill. I don't want to have to call Netflix and make a payment each month. I just expect I get the service, I pay the bill. Like, I
okay.
want everything in my life to be direct debited because I don't want to have to mess about with payment. And that's both business and personal life. And none of your clients want to have to make payments.
It goes so much deeper than that with MSPs though, and I mean now you got me all fired up. When you Netflix is the perfect example. Netflix doesn't care whether I quit Netflix. They don't give a Okay, we'll just fill that in yourselves at home. But they don't care. Yeah, okay, I'm going to quit Netflix. Click the link, shut it down, move on. MSPs feel like their customers are made of gold because they are hard to come by, because they don't have a sales motion, they don't have a marketing motion. I promise you, I swear to God, as God is my witness, if you focus on creating new revenue on a monthly basis, then you get to fire those clients that Ben wants you to train. I don't want you to train them. I want you to kick them out the door and say, I am sorry, our value proposition deserves better than the treatment we are getting from you. We are no longer interested in providing services and being held ransom for the revenue associated with those services. Bye. Go
I
away.
think it's simpler than that. I genuinely don't think the clients are doing it on purpose. I think the MSPs are just so terrified of asking perfectly good clients, just put an ACH on file. You're literally asking them to spend 1 minute filling in one form, and they will thank you for it because they don't have to mess about with bookkeeping and making transfers and stuff. So, like, stop assuming your clients don't want automation in their lives as a result of you offering it.
Well, the simple truth is if you're afraid you're going to lose your client and you're afraid you're going to lose the revenue that makes the difference between making the car payment and not making the car payment, all those other things, then you are not going to take those risks. And I am here to tell you that if you spend the time, I'm actually going to sit down with an MSP later today, a friend of mine I've known forever, who wants to change their revenue profile. And I mapped out the whole, hey, here are the things you need to know. Here are the targets you need to hit. Here are the cost structures. Like we haven't answered all those questions yet, but like, here's the map associated with getting to that win. You need to know what that map is for your MSP. And then you need to be willing to say, okay, I asked you to fill out the ACH. Ben said, fill out the ACH form. You said, okay, I'll do it. And then you didn't do it. You didn't do it this month. You didn't do it last month. Next month, services don't happen anymore. So, and then we find out whether Ben is right at that point. They either do it or they go away. And if they go away, they go away. And chances are many of them will come back or get the form
Or
filled in.
or you move the form fill to the excitement of the sale and the whole problem never happened in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's at the time of win. But when we're talking about here is how MSPs say, my
Yeah.
customers don't want this. They've been writing me a check forever. You know,
But every day you leave that problem ticking on is another client that you then have to retrospectively get back into the program. Like if you just make
exactly.
the decision today, stop messing about, get automated payment in place, hopefully with Momentum, but feel free explore the others and then come back to us anyway. Um, get that process in place, automate the hell out of your payments, and just stop worrying about that whole problem.
And remember during all of this that that single customer who's writing you a check is burning 5 times as much time as 5 other clients who just set up their ACH and got the hell out of the way right away. Like, don't waste your time on clients who waste your time. Don't let that happen. But you have to drive revenue in order to get there. And teching your way into sales and doing a lot of things that Momentum's talking about will help you move down that road. This all kind of comes together and makes sense. Ben, you had some questions, I think, and we're running over. Do you want to poll the audience or are we gonna just let that go?
No, I think we'll just let it go because we probably had the discussion. There was one more question, and to be honest, the poll was more to help sort of steer our thoughts. But I think no one's changing our minds anyway, like poll or
Okay.
otherwise. No one's changing our minds. So what's the point asking for opinions if you're not going to listen? One more question. Any predictions on emerging trends and technologies in payments? Anything we haven't discussed that you think is really going to change over the next couple of years?
Well, I guess I don't know what the change is going to be, but I think everybody ought to be paying attention to it. Uh, the security side of payments is going to evolve. It is going to change, and it's going to be some kind of forklift upgrade. I've been listening to various and assorted experts in this space, in the FBI and other places, who are talking about this cannot go on. The cost associated with fraud is exorbitant. It's getting worse. The crooks are getting better. Things are changing, nickel and dime changing all the time. But I see frustration, anger, loss of revenue, all the other things. There's going to become a coalition of we need to forklift change this, and it's gonna be legally done as opposed to business practices done. I mean, it's going to be a cooperation between business and government, and something's going to change. I just don't know what technology it is that's going to be adopted that eliminates a lot of the fraud that's coming. That's what I see as the biggest challenge moving forward. So,
That
and
makes
the big
sense.
we're going to have to fight with. So, oh boy, here we are.
Yeah. So the image here was shared with me when I posted about this webinar on LinkedIn, and within about 5 minutes, a friend of mine, Craig, who now makes so much money, he lives over in Dubai with his family and runs his UK MSP from there. Um, Tapped back immediately with this slightly doctored image from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Ben and Ted's Excellent Adventure. We're going to be hosting sessions like this, talking about various related topics. Probably, I think it's going to be once a month, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
We hope you'll come on Ben and Ted's Excellent Adventure as we navigate our way through various revenue opportunities that MSPs have in front of them. If you want to connect with me directly, Ben at Zementum.com, or Ted at Zementum.com. Any questions, feedback, if it's product feedback, probably bring it to me directly. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us. Always happy to continue the conversation. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it, and hope you come back and bring your friends, because I think next month Ben and I are going to be at Kaseya Global in Las Vegas. My guess is we will sit down, have a few pints, just to say it the other way, and figure out what our topic is going to be for this time next month. So it'll probably be pretty crazy, but we'll get it out there and let you know. But thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.